Yes. Okay, we are calling to order the Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 meeting of the Carleton City Council. This is the work session. Roll call, please.
All right. Mayor-elect with Linda Watkins.
Here.
All right. Council President-elect Shirley Woolard-Mullen.
Here.
Councillor Kevin Skipper.
Here.
Councillor Guillaume Brandau.
Here.
Councillor Grant Erickson.
Here.
Councillor-elect Carolyn Thompson-Riser.
Here.
Councillor-elect David Samuel Hill.
Here.
All are present and accounted for.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the oath of office and swearing in for. Sir.
Good evening. I have an order here to do this in that I've been instructed to, so
Okay.
we'll first do Carolyn Thompson-Riser. Pardon?
You want to switch it back towards,
Oh, actually, yeah. I need-
And is there a better camera angle over there for them? Are we in
Sorry,
now?
Kevin, I'm trying to
Okay,
get
I
rid of.
got the whole screen.
Let's see, put
Are you
you
gonna sit?
guys a little bit over by the, so you got the flag in the background.
I'm almost done. All right, is that good enough?
There it is.
Am I out of it? Am I out of the picture?
Yeah, you're pretty well done.
Good.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Carolyn Thompson-Riser,
I, Carolyn Thompson-Riser,
the undersigned duly elected city councillor
the undersigned duly elected city councillor
of the city of Carleton,
of the city of Carleton,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and America
and America
and the state of Oregon
and the state of Oregon
and the charter and ordinances
and the charter and ordinances
of the city of Carleton,
of the city of Carleton,
and I will faithfully perform
and I will faithfully perform
my duties
my duties
as city councillor
as city
to the
councillor
best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next one.
Anybody check under the mask? See if-
Next one I have on my list is David Hill.
Behind you.
My wife isn't down here yet.
You want to wait?
Yeah.
Oh, we wait. All right, then Shirley Ward Mullen.
That's me.
All right, you have family here.
Need your husband,
That's coming.
he's coming,
I
okay,
got him.
and the grandkids. Okay.
Honorary,
Stand over here for me, please. Now, was it your husband who gave me a list of questions while you were under oath that I was supposed to ask you?
Yeah.
Alrighty. It's a long list, I forgot. All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Shirley Ward Mullen,
I, Shirley Ward Mullen,
the undersigned and duly elected city councillor
the undersigned and duly elected city councillor
for the city of Carleton,
for the city of Carleton,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States of America
and the laws of the United States of America
and the state of Oregon
and the state of Oregon
and the charter and ordinances
and the charter and ordinances
of the city of
of
Carleton,
the city of Carleton,
and that I will faithfully perform
and I will faithfully perform
my duties as city councillor
my duties as city councillor
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was nice. Very good. You got anything else?
No, let's go ahead.
My son's name is Samuel, so it's a good name, so it's good. Okay,
I swear I'm a vote.
you may. So usually you raise your right hand?
Yep.
And nobody else is here? Okay. I, David Samuel Hill,
I, David Samuel Hill,
the undersigned duly elected city councillor
the undersigned duly elected city councillor
for the city of Carlton,
for the city of Carlton,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and the laws of the United States of America
and the laws of the United States of America
and the state of Oregon
and the state of Oregon
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Carlton,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Carlton,
and that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
my duties as city councillor
my duties as city councillor
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's either Colin or the people in the ground. I didn't want to start out on a bad precedent.
I used to have a courtroom in a trailer too, and I always worried that if they didn't like my decisions, they would throw my courtroom away. Let's just hope that doesn't happen. Do you want to stand here? That'd be great.
Right on the line.
Yes.
Okay.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after
Right.
me. I, Linda Watkins,
I, Linda Watkins,
the undersigned duly elected mayor
the undersigned duly elected mayor
of the city of Carlton,
of the city of Carlton,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution and laws
I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States of
of
America
the United States of America
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
and charter and ordinances of the city of Carlton,
and charter and ordinances of the city of Carlton,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
my duties as mayor
my duties as mayor
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I meet all of you. All right, so I will sign. And I think one of them.
Hey, guys.
Because it said council, but it should say mayor.
Hi.
You pick the mayor, wants to make sure it's okay.
Oh, no, am I gonna be illegitimate? Why don't you say there? Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down. Okay. Item number 2, the comprehensive plan update review.
Thank you, Mayor Watkins. Mayor and council, we have Steve here from Freeway to walk through the memorandum that is in your packet, update you on the comprehensive plan updates and talk about next steps and ask for your input in the comprehensive plan. Steve, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Wait a minute.
Right. Can you hear us?
Hear me.
Very quiet.
Okay, I don't think it's.
Try again, Steve.
Can you hear me now?
Sort of, no.
I think your volume is very quiet. We are maxed out on both.
How about now?
Yes.
Excellent.
There we go.
The settings on my Zoom keep changing on the microphone and I'm not sure why. So thank you for letting me know.
That's the story of our life.
It is now.
Yeah.
Should I go ahead and get started?
Yes, please. Yes.
Could someone please allow me to share my screen? I have a presentation to share.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much for giving me some time to share with you the latest in the Carlton Comprehensive Plan update process. And I'll just say, what a great way to start a meeting. Congratulations to everyone who was sworn in today. That
you.
sets a nice tone for the evening.
Thank you.
So the last time I presented to you was in July. So here we are in October. Gotta adjust my screen. Here we are in January. This purple diamond represents our briefing here with you, and we'll be meeting for the final time with our advisory committee to discuss the comprehensive plan next week. And then we will move to the adoption process in February and March, although we have not locked down dates for hearings with Planning Commission and City Council. So that is on our to-do list. If you recall, the comprehensive plan process, there's several steps in the process. We started by preparing background reports on different elements of the comprehensive plan, such as housing and economic development, things of that nature. That kind of helps establish what the community is like today, what Carleton is like today. And then we worked on the 2040 vision through a lot of community outreach and a lot of great work from our project advisory committee. And so when I met with you last in July, we presented the community vision. This is not the full vision, but just a reminder of what we talked about in July. So the next step in the process was for us to develop goals and policies, so that now that we know what our vision for 2040 is, how do we get there? And that's what we've been working on with the project advisory committee and with several activities to engage the broader public over the last, I guess, 6 or so months. And then now we are in the process of assembling the actual comprehensive plan, which combines all these elements into one document. We are putting the finishing touches on that document. It will be going out to our project advisory committee tomorrow in advance of their meeting next week. But today we're really going to focus on the goals and policies, really the policies. And we actually took the policies a step further and in some cases identified objectives. And that's what you have in your packets. So where did the policies come from? Well, the first thing we did was look at existing comprehensive plan policies in the city's current comprehensive plan. These, not in my presentation tonight, but in the document in your packets, there are some items that have an asterisk noted on them. And those are the items that we brought forward from the current comprehensive plan. There used to be a note in that document, but somehow it disappeared. So I apologize for that. So that's the first thing we did, is say, what do we want to keep from the current comprehensive plan? We then went through the background reports, which I mentioned for all these different comprehensive plan elements, kind of inventorying data about, like I said, housing, economic development, transportation, all these different items, which we'll go through in just a moment. And so the background reports really serve as a way for us to identify current issues and needs. And so that was another source for us to develop policies. We also, both in our work, so we do a fair amount of these comprehensive plans for cities around the state of Oregon. And we also look at the work, projects that we haven't worked on and look at what other communities are doing to see if we can learn from best practices and implement policies from other communities if we think they're a good fit. As I mentioned, we had several project advisory committee meetings to review and add and strengthen these policies and objectives. And then we had a Carleton Summit in October, at the beginning of October, and several online questionnaires to gather input from the broader public. So that's how we generated the policies that I'm going to go through with you right now. I'll mention for each of these, this top sentence is the goal for that element or a chapter of the comprehensive plan. And these are taken directly from the Oregon statewide planning goals. That's not required, but we felt in this case, and I think our project advisory committee agreed, that was a good place to start. So for each of these elements, the goal is taken directly from the Oregon statewide planning goals. For policies for each of these, I've bolded a few key words in each of them because it's a lot to read. I don't know if we want to spend the next 30 minutes having me read word for word these policies. But I tried to bold those words to kind of call out the key point of each of these policies. I mentioned we also developed objectives for tonight's meeting. They're in your packet for tonight's meeting. I didn't include them in the presentation because I just want to be respectful of your time. So goal 1 in Oregon statewide planning is citizen involvement. We have 3 policies here. The first is to use a variety of methods to educate and inform community members about planning and projects in the community. The second is to engage citizens to obtain their opinions throughout the planning process and use strategies to reach underrepresented populations. And the third is to promote different types of communication to promote community awareness and involvement. And if you want, please, as we go through, please speak up if you have any questions. I guess I should be clear that we're happy to take any recommendations for modifications to these policies. That's really what we're trying to do tonight, is get you a little bit familiar with these policies before we come back to you in a few months with the full comprehensive plan. So this is kind of a preview of sorts of the key component of the comprehensive plan. Goal 2 is land use planning. And under land use planning, we identified 3 policies. The first is to review and update or amend the comprehensive plan every 10 years. We did have some back and forth on what the appropriate amount of time was. Again, this comprehensive plan covers a 20-year time horizon. Like we said, the vision is for 2040, and it's meant to be a 20-year document. But I would say that best practices is to do some sort of update every 10 years or so, and that's where the project advisory committee landed. The second policy is ensuring that future land needs are analyzed and met through the city's different policies and ordinances. And the third is using intergovernmental agreements with the county and other public agencies. This policy really pertains primarily to the urban growth boundary, Carleton's urban growth boundary, and managing the land within that urban growth boundary. So really looking at urban growth management. We then skip, in terms of, this will be the next chapter in the comprehensive plan. In terms of Oregon statewide planning goals, this is goal number 5, because 3 and 4 are agriculture and forests, and those policies pertain to counties because they're rural lands, agriculture and forests, not to cities. So those are really county of the rural goals, and we focus on the urban goals for cities. So natural resources, scenic and historic areas, and open spaces. We have 3 policies again: protecting and enhancing natural resources, looking for ways to maintain and continue to develop the city's open space network, and identifying sites and structures related to the history of the state, kind of historic buildings, districts, things of that nature that should be protected and enhanced. Goal 6 is air, water, and land resources quality. We have 3 policies here. Not all of these have 3 policies, but so far we have. The first policy is protecting air, water, and land quality from the impacts of development, just through standards and regulations. Encouraging lighting design and practices that reduce the negative impacts of light pollution. I remember that was one that came specifically out of one of our community meetings. People wanted to continue to promote a dark skies type of policy. And the third is participating in any regional environmental quality planning efforts.
Steve, can I jump in?
please.
A question on that, that second goal there, or second policy, can you expand on that a little bit? Like, I mean, are we talking about reducing the number of streetlights in our neighborhoods and things like of that nature, or what is that? What is that policy kind of trying to capture?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I don't think we have an objective under that. Just writing this down. And it's certainly, I'm not an expert, so we can look to best practices, but I don't think we're talking about reducing the number of lights. I think we're talking about measures that I've seen, such as making sure that lights are directed downward rather than kind of up or out. I think older lighting designs used to not really concentrate the lighting where it needed to be for safety. So there was a lot of light kind of escaping into the night sky. And probably looking at the types of bulbs that are used and making sure that they kind of do the same thing, kind of promote emitting light where it's needed for safety and other purposes, and not wasting light up into the night sky.
Great, thanks for clarifying that.
You bet. But I think I will do a little research on best practices there, and we can add some objectives to give those or better examples from what I can find. Okay, goal 7, areas subject to natural hazards. We have 5 policies here. The first is related to limiting development in floodplains. I only highlighted floodplains, but I think there might be a little bit of miswording here. I'll take another look at that, but really it's to limit development in floodplains, areas susceptible to wildfire, and lands with not steep slopes, but steep slopes and unstable soils. So really trying to look at limiting development in hazard areas. The second policy is promoting earthquake hazard awareness and hazard mitigation activities. The third is continuing to advise applicants people who are applying for development permits about areas that have the potential for natural hazard effects. The fourth is preparing a disaster preparedness plan that looks at how the city will prevent, protect against, mitigate, respond to, and recover from natural disasters. I think these planning efforts are becoming much more prevalent in recent years than they used to be. And then number 5, coordinating natural hazard mitigation activities with emergency operations plans and procedures, and with various agencies. That could be police and fire, it could be county services. So coordinating natural hazard activities with other agencies.
Steve, I have a question, Shirley, on 4, on the previous slide.
On the previous, on this one?
No, the next one. Yeah, on number 4. Does that also take into account neighborhood programs for emergency preparedness or response to an emergency or disaster?
Yep, it certainly could. This concept came up. I can't remember if it was at one of our committee meetings or if it was with the broader public. And I just did some research I was looking for language that that kind of generally describes what's included in a disaster preparedness plan. And that's where I got the language for this policy. I think it would really, but I didn't want to over dictate what would be included in that plan. That wouldn't be appropriate for a policy. So I think if the city, when developing this disaster preparedness plan, wanted to include, I guess I'll just say there's different ways to go about it. And if you wanted to include information specific, neighborhood specific information, that would certainly be covered by this policy.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, goal 8, recreational needs. So the first policy, we have 4, is to develop a diverse system of parks and park programs for community members. The second, to look at a network of pedestrian and bicycle trails. And this There is a little bit of potential overlap with this policy with the transportation section, but folks thought it was important to promote biking and walking as a recreational activity in addition to transportation. The third policy is coordinating with other adjacent jurisdictions to plan for and create parks and other recreational facilities. And the fourth is to maintain a healthy urban forest by encouraging a diverse selection for trees for streetscapes and parklands. And I apologize, I think we moved this policy to a different chapter to the public utilities and services because we felt it was more appropriate there. It's not really a recreation element, but just in case it didn't get moved there, there it is, so you can review it. All right. Although we did talk about trees and parklands here, I'm sorry. So I guess it is appropriate here. Goal 9 is economic development. So the first policy is to plan for an adequate supply of commercial and industrial land. One of the things that cities in Oregon do is studies to make sure that you have enough land. This is really about employment, making sure you have enough land to support the types of jobs that you'd like to see in Carleton. So that's the purpose of that policy. The second is encouraging the growth of existing businesses and entrepreneurs and the attraction of new businesses to create jobs with a range of wages. And the third is to encourage and support commercial development in downtown. Moving on to goal 10, which is housing. We have 5 policies here. The first is to, this one is really about coordinating housing development with public services. So making sure that public services are available in areas where development is taking place. The second is monitoring your land supply. And like with the previous goal, looking for economic development or employment, making sure there's enough land to support residential growth. Over the, we really, again, look at a 20-year planning horizon. So making sure you have enough land for residential growth, encouraging a mix of housing types, including attached and detached single-family housing and multifamily options. Number 4 is encouraging the development of housing affordable to low and moderate income households. And the 5th is making sure there are options that are accessible to people of all abilities. So that would include senior housing and housing that is accessible for people with disabilities. Goal 11, public facilities and services. We have 4 policies here. The first is to modernize and maintain municipal facilities for efficient and cost-effective service provision. The second is promoting equitable sewer and water assessment schemes. I think that is one that we brought forward from the current comprehensive plan. Third is looking at energy efficient and cost-effective methods to provide and maintain public facilities and services. And the 4th is ensuring adequate emergency services.
Steve, can I jump in again?
Yes, please.
So those basically line up with what we were provided, but I had a note here because then there's 5 and 6 on our set of plans that talk about urban forest and mature trees again. So that might need to be looked at. And then my second, with the asterisks of it being in the current comprehensive plan, it specifically says on ours, update utility infrastructure over time to minimize the use of and need for pump stations. I mean, I see that as being a kind of a challenge, maybe for future, but I mean, we're kind of at the mercy of what our infrastructure is like for need of pump stations and distance and terrain and things like that. So I'm a little bit confused if that exact wording is in our current comprehensive plan.
I'm opening the document right now. I think I might have been victim to a little bit of versionitis here with my PowerPoint presentation because I've noticed a few things that don't align with the latest revisions that I recall from, and it sounds like with the document that you have. So I'm looking at the document now that you have. And you said it, oh, there it says, yeah. I'll
You
have
had
to
the
take a,
second part, right? I just was
Yep.
curious what the thought process was behind that. And maybe it's just something that was grabbed from our previous plan, but
yeah, I think
stations are
we,
just kind of a necessary thing.
yeah, I think let me go back and take another look at that policy. I mean, I think possibly, and I don't know why that doesn't kind of align with what I have in my presentation. I think the idea was to show a preference for gravity sewer, but so that would be minimizing the need for pump stations, if I recall the conversation correctly. But if we think that language is problematic, that's certainly something that we can revise. Would you like to see kind of that reference to pump stations removed? And just focus on
I'd
the
be more
site?
curious of where it came from, I guess, is like, is it currently part of what a goal or a policy in our plan and maybe talk to Brian and see, I don't know. It just seems kind of an odd thing to specifically target removal of pump stations. And I just kind of more curious of, did that come out of the community meetings? Did that come from the current plan?
Yeah,
Yeah, it would be great if our system was all gravity fed and we didn't have to have them, but it's just not reality, I guess.
yeah, let me check and see. I will do this on the fly if it doesn't take me too long. I'm trying to look at the current comprehensive plan for our goals and policies here. And I'll say while I'm scanning through this document that we didn't track where, precisely where each and every policy came from, but we did primarily initially show the ones that came from the comprehensive plan. So that's why I'm hopeful that we have that here. I see the findings, but I'm not seeing the goals and policies right now.
Well, I don't want to hold it. I mean, maybe we can come back to it, Steve. That one kind of, I made a note, that one was interesting.
No, it's a great point. And again, I apologize. I'm not sure why it doesn't, what I'm presenting on my screen doesn't totally align with what you have in that packet. So I apologize for that. I don't know what happened. Hopefully it's largely consistent here because like you said, I don't have all 6 of those policies, but yeah, I see that it does have the urban forest policy and one for street trees. So I will make sure that next time I present, I have these policies up to date. I'll keep an eye on this document while I go through transportation. We have 5 policies here. The first is planning for a multimodal transportation system. So, pedestrians, bikes, and vehicles that's accessible for all those users. Designing transportation facilities to improve safety of all users. Providing downtown access that's safe and convenient for pedestrians and bicycles. Ensuring coordination with regional partners and looking at exploring opportunities to participate in local or regional public transportation or public transit programs. I know there isn't much that exists today, but folks talked about from our PAC, talked about, the potential for smaller transit, like a commuter van or bus of some sort, or if there are opportunities to participate in transit programs of a more regional nature.
Steve, if I could just jump in for a second here.
Yeah.
more like a recommendation. I'm not quite sure how it fits in here, and it kind of fits in mostly with the policies of transportation, housing and economic development, but probably most importantly with transportation and economic development. If we want to make some kind of affirmative statement in the document about encouraging, promoting policies that allow for seniors to age in place in this community. Because now that is a bit of a problem with respect to transportation, for example. So I'm not
So-
quite sure.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's it. That's the state. That's
Okay. Yeah, so are you talking about kind of enhancing this fifth policy regarding transit?
transit, housing, and economic development that are
Okay.
support the senior citizens in this community to live here, age in place in this community, and have the resources necessary to be able to do that. I'm not sure how that would work out in this policy.
Yeah. So I just flipped back to housing. We do have a policy that talks about encouraging the development of housing options accessible to people of all abilities. If we want to add a specific policy related to senior housing, that's certainly something we could do. What did you have anything specific in mind in terms of economic development, or is it?
Regarding economic development, it's more, actually, it's for all citizens here, but to promote economic development here in the area of having resources that we would be able to, for instance, go to a grocery store here and not have to drive 10 miles round trip. So I mean, that applies to all the citizens, but it's most important for those that it's harder for them to get around.
Yeah, we certainly can enhance some of these policies to reflect that. And if you look at your document, there are some in the objectives that we've prepared. It does get more specific in some areas. I'm trying to see if we had anything. I know several people talked about a grocery store, but people also talked about not wanting a grocery store in downtown. So we developed some objectives to try to get to that idea. But we certainly can do another review of these areas that you've mentioned to make sure we've appropriately incorporated the concepts of aging in place, access to daily needs, whether that's, like you said, on the economic development side, or if we're talking about transportation access.
Yeah, and I don't even think it necessarily has to be limited to seniors, because it also would be with respect to disabled citizens,
Yeah.
those that are, it's harder for them to access resources.
Yeah, we're
Sorry, I'm stopping.
we're just cutting time here a little short, so we're getting close.
Okay, I will move through the rest. And I apologize for some of the inconsistencies here, but I appreciate your feedback, and we'll make sure to incorporate those ideas. So goal 13 is energy conservation. We have 3 policies: energy conservation in new development by site planning and landscaping and construction practices, things of that nature. We're talking about energy conservation in terms of land use patterns that, again, here getting to what you just said, making sure that different types of land use activities are accessible within close proximity. And the third is planning and encouraging support for renewable energy sources. And then
Steve,
Yep.
this is David. Underneath number 1, can we add to that underneath drought resistant? Can we do drought and wildfire resistant landscaping?
Yes. Thank you. Yep, I will add that. Thank you. Goal 14 is urbanization. We have 3 policies here. One is updating and expanding the urban growth boundary when appropriate, essentially. The second is encouraging the location of housing to minimize the consumption of prime agricultural land. So again, kind of building efficiently and coordinating with public resources and things of that nature, so we preserve our natural resources. And the third is encouraging infill development to utilize vacant parcels. So kind of looking inwards to use vacant parcels before looking to expand the urban growth boundary. So that is our goals and policies. Please pay more attention to the document that you have in front of you than my PowerPoint, but because those are the current ones. But I appreciate the comments that I've received tonight, and we'll do our best to incorporate your ideas and kind of answer your questions before we come back to you again through the adoption process. So as I mentioned, next week, our project advisory committee meets for the 5th time, I believe, but the final time to talk about the draft comprehensive plan. But you'll also of note is that that meeting will kick off the code update process. So that group will continue to meet over the next 9 months or so, I believe, to begin working on the updates to the community development code. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be looking to come back to planning commission and city council this spring to adopt the comprehensive plan when we have that ready for you. And any final questions? I know I want to be conscious of time.
Last question.
Sure.
One more question. I'm going to go back to goal number 9 real quick. In section 3, I think it's section 3. I lost my train of thought now. But I was wondering, I see the language in there that says limit large commercial operations. I know you mentioned talk about grocery store. I know there's been talk in the past about trying to limit franchise operations. I don't know if that needs to be addressed more, because when you talk about a grocery store, you know, I'm not gonna even say the name of the company, you know what I mean, but small towns around them have them, you know, how we kind of keep with this. I know the words are in there about keeping with the small town charm, but does there need to be more like hard language, maybe specific like to franchise?
Yeah, so
Am I in the right, you know what I mean?
I think you are. We spent some time on this. I mean, what we heard from people is, yes, we want a grocery store. It wouldn't be appropriate to have that grocery store in kind of the downtown area. Also, I don't know. I think through talking to the next time we meet, or at some point you'll meet Elizabeth Decker from Jet Planning, who's leading the code update process. And I don't think legally you can prohibit franchise establishments. So we were trying to find language to essentially, say that we don't, people often use the term big box. We're not looking for big box stores especially in the downtown area of Carlton, but I didn't want to include language that would seem like the city is not interested in a grocery store. So if that's off base, let me know, but that was kind of the thinking behind the language we developed.
Maybe we can check and verify what we're prohibited from prohibiting. Or
Could you, I'm not sure I understand.
well, you were saying that you weren't sure if we could say that we don't want franchises in here. Are you certain about that, or that we can't use that language, or?
I'll double check on that. That was my understanding, but I'll confirm that.
A lot of times in these codes, what towns and cities look for is to maintain the rural character or the character of the community is design standards for how, even if a franchise were to come in, what it would look like. So that you're not necessarily limiting who can come into town, but you're saying what they're going to look like should they choose to operate in town.
So how much of that can be applied in here?
And it may, Steve was talking about his colleague there, it may be part of the development code process more than the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
That's right. I think the language we have, we can certainly modify it to something along the same lines, but at a policy level, we really want to give direction. But really we regulate through our code and things like design standards. So that'll be a topic of conversation as part of the code update process.
I just want to make sure that it doesn't get lost in the conversation. Okay, thanks.
If there aren't, go ahead.
Steve, if council has additional feedback after they have time to think about this, they can email us or you and or attend the PAC meeting next week and provide additional comments should they choose to.
Most definitely. I would recommend sending comments to Amy and our PAC meeting is on, I just want to make sure I get it right here, is on January 18th. So I think that is Wednesday of next week, and that'll be a virtual meeting. Please do attend if you would like to provide further comments in that way as well. Okay, well, thank you all for your time.
We have about
Thank
13
you.
minutes left in the work session if you have any additional questions for Steve.
Well, we've got urban renewal, financial report.
It's 7.
Excuse me? Oh, am I looking at, no. All right. I just,
That's amazing.
no, it's okay, go ahead. Yeah. That's fine.
Steve, I guess one more point of clarification. You told us to focus on the document in front of us. I just want to double down on the document in front of us has that urban forest tree stuff listed multiple times in different. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm just maybe suggesting. I had a note here that it's kind of redundant in a lot of different, and maybe it's meant to be that way. That's fine. I just was.
Yeah,
Kinda
I appreciate that. That's probably the one area where I think we copied and pasted it to the correct location, but did not delete it from the previous location. So I do have a note here to clean that up. Thank you.
Okay, well, my apologies, folks. So if you have any more questions, go for it.
I've got one more, sorry. Hey, Steve, I'm gonna ask another question. And maybe this is a city staff question, but goals 3 and 4, you mentioned we skip over because of the state or is that a 3J's recommendation, or is that a standard thing that all cities don't have goals 3 and 4 in there? And that's specifically for counties. I just was curious if our previous comp plan had something in any of those sections.
That's a good question. I don't think so. I've seen a few that have had some information on those things before. And actually Carlton is the one. So they're related to ag and forest. Let me see what they say, because cities aren't supposed to have agricultural or forest land, right? Those are not urban lands. The way that Oregon's land use planning system is set up, those are rural lands. So those should be those lands you would find in a county and not in a city. I'm skipping quickly here to what the current comp plan says. Goal to preserve the economic livelihood of the farmer by preserving prime agricultural land for farming. So I guess it's similar to our urbanization goals, where we're saying that we want to develop efficiently so that we're not eating up farm and forest land. The policies talk about converting from urban uses. It's really items that I recommend. It all has to do with land and the urban growth boundary. So we put those types of policies in goal 14. And I think most comprehensive plans that you see across Oregon for cities would do the same, would not include any goals related to agricultural and forest lands. I hope that didn't confuse things further.
Nope, I think you nailed it there. Thank you.
There is a little bit, there's like a paragraph on forest lands, but it just says there are no forest lands in Carlton, so.
Steve,
other
can we go
questions?
back to goal 5, policy 1, subsection C? And in the
Goal
packet
5.
that I have.
Yep.
It says establish and maintain hedgerows as vital wildlife habitat. Can we
Yes.
change that to native vegetation?
We can. That came specifically from one of our PAC members. I'd be happy to float that concept with them to see if we can use that term instead of hedgerows or in addition to. But I think we could.
As a friendly suggestion, in addition to,
Okay, we can make that addition.
thank you.
Thank you.
And Steve, if actually the counselor brings up an excellent point, as a wildlife biologist, if we could get a definition of hedgerows, because that's not something that came up in my degree.
Sounds good. I had to look, I had to look it up. So, yeah, it's not a term you hear very often. So if we, I certainly can, we can change the wording there if we feel, but a hedgerow is, let's see here, hedge of wild shrubs and trees typically bordering a road or field. They kind of are used, it's like vegetation that's used as a boundary for along roadsides or other types of boundaries, but we can take a look at updating that language.
And then I have one more, goal 11. Policy 6. Can we add healthy to existing mature trees?
Yes. So that would say preserve and protect existing healthy mature trees, ... correct?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else for this evening?
We appear to be good.
All right, well, thank you for your comments. These will be really helpful as we kind of revise and strengthen the draft document that we'll be sending to the advisory committee for their review next week. And then, of course, we'll be coming again to Planning Commission and to this group in the not too distant future, and I look forward to that. Thank you again for the time tonight.
Thank you, Steve.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, yes, do we have a motion to adjourn the work session?
Motion to adjourn the work session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. It is 7 o'clock and we are opening the Carlton Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Call the roll, please.
All right, Mayor Linda Watkins,
Here.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen. Here. Councilor Kevin Skipper,
Here.
Councilor Jeremy Brandel.
Here.
Councilor Greg Erickson,
Here.
Councilor Carolyn Thompson Riser,
Here.
Councilor David Samuel Hill,
Here.
all councilors are present.
Thank you. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
No, they're not there.
First item on the agenda then is minutes approval for the June 7th, 2022 urban renewal.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is Christy. On item number 2, in the first sentence, it should say urban renewal budget, so that we will be making that change from report to budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Item number 2 under public.
Are you looking at the minutes, Christie?
Yes, the minutes, that's what you guys are going to be making a motion on. It shows under 1, approval of the minutes, and 2, the fiscal year Carlton Urban Renewal Budget. On the second line, the narrative underneath it says Urban Renewal Report, and it should say Urban Renewal Budget.
I move to approve the urban renewal, Carlton Urban Renewal Agency minutes from Tuesday, June 7th, 2022, with the changes of in item 2. It says the urban renewal, it say the urban renewal budget for fiscal year 22, 23.
Second.
Is all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, and then we are looking at the urban renewal financial report for fiscal year 2022.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I want to if you'll let me give a little brief narrative on the Urban Renewal Agency at this time. Before I talk about the report, as we have new counselors. So City Council also serves as the Urban Renewal District Agency. So Urban Renewal is not the City of Carlton. They're two separate things. They have two separate budgets. So for our new counselors, Urban Renewal was set in the city in 2009 in the Carlton downtown and some surrounding areas. It's what we call around here is CURA. We do receive our revenue for this budget and expenses by property tax rates on the current assessed value. And this assessed value is over the frozen value that was set in 2009. And I'll talk about that in the report. But that's where Urban Renewal gets its funds. Urban Renewal's 4 goals for these funds that were developed by the Planning Commission in many, many public meetings. They had 4 goals. 1 was to improve public facilities. 2, develop the downtown street areas. 3, upgrade streets, bicycle and pedestrian travel areas. And 4, development of vacant commercial properties. So those funds have to be designated in some capacity there. The plan will sunset in about FY31. Its approximate value at the time of sunset is 3.7 million. It might be a little bit more with our economy. Currently, 1 million of that is been slated, and there's an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Carlton and Carlton Renewal Agency. And they paid $1 million towards the debt service of phase 1 of the Meadow Lake transmission line, not the one that we just paid for with the grant. And then the other part is on debt service at a very low interest rate. And it's also contributed towards the pool and the Monroe Street developments over by the soccer club area. So the City Council does serve as the board, and it cannot be commingled with the City of Carlton. They're totally independent. It has 2 separate budgets. It has its own set of rules, and the City of Carlton budget has its own set of rules. So I kind of wanted to give you guys more of a descriptor rather than just bringing it forward and not, so you know why we have to do it separate. So with that being said, we'll go to the item tonight that we're bringing forward. We're recommending that you approve and forward this Urban Renewal financial report to the City Council for FY22. So you're always reporting on a fiscal year prior. That's why the dates are different. And with this approval, that then goes to City Council to the consent agenda. So you'll be approving it in capacity twice tonight. This is a requirement by the state of Oregon, an urban renewal law. It had to be posted in the newspaper, the post office, on our website in multiple locations. And this is reporting out what we're receiving as taxes, which is item number 1. Any revenue from debt issuance, we don't do any debt issuance. Item number 2, we're reporting out what our expenses were, what we did for improvements, which were towards projects. And then you'll see that debt service expenditure, which is the commitment of the $65,000 annually for the Meadow Lake. Items 3 and 4 are just budgeted items. So they are estimated figures that we are anticipating for FY 23, $256,000 in tax revenue. We're anticipating material and services of 4,500. And you're going to see the improvement budget, and it looks fairly large, $444,081. The reason that is by law, budget law, we cannot put that money into contingency. So that money is slated for any projects that could fall into it, but often we usually run around $40,000 to $50,000 in projects. So that's, in a sense, kind of a placeholder, but you can't hold it in contingency. And then debt service, again, obligating that 65,000. So the only number that's really fluid is the improvement budget and what gets slated on that. On the second page, the interesting component. So when they froze the values, it does have an impact on other entities that had taxing rights in the area we froze. And so this shows the impact, that little chart shows the impact on them for the year that they did not get to receive those tax revenues, the Carlton Urban Renewal District did. So this is just an annual report that we need to send forth and follow urban renewal budget law. And if we are asking that you approve and forward it on to City Council for approve in the consent agenda.
Are there any questions?
Do you have one, Mayor? Christie, can you explain that really quickly again? Item number 4, the total improvement budget. I know you mentioned, well, that'll actually be, so next year at this time, we're gonna see expenditures probably in the $50,000, $60,000 range or something more or less.
Yeah.
So again, why does that number have to be so
Because
big?
by budget law, you cannot have money in your contingency. Contingency is in case we have an emergency. And so you have to plan for monies that you have for projects. So that will end up going into the beginning fund balance as we determine what we're going to do with that last million. And so before it gets to the beginning fund balance, it first goes to the improvement budget, but it is not slated to be spent. It's a technicality with the budget law. I can't put it in beginning fund balance till the year closes.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve? Somebody?
I motion to approve.
Are we gonna let it go? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. And with
Thank
that,
you.
thanks, Christie. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn the urban renewal agency meeting?
Motion to it. Oh, go ahead, Grant.
No, motion to adjourn. The renewal. Yes, the urban renewal, well, that'd be the financial.
Seconded.
You second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we have to wait until 7:15, don't we?
Yep, we have about 4 minutes.
15, and we will start this, convene this regular session of the Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 Carlton City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Linda Watkins,
Here.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen. Here. Councilor Kevin Skipper,
Here.
Councilor Jeremy Brandau.
Here.
Councilor Grant Erickson,
Here.
Councilor Carolyn Thompson Riser.
Here.
Councilor David Samuel Hill.
Here.
All councilors present and accounted for.
Thank you. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, ceremonies, appointments, announcements. Okay, on that. All righty, we come to the section for citizen comments. And I want to be clear on this. This is this time and the section of our agenda that allows members of the public to address the city council on any items off or on the agenda. If you have any questions about anything, this is when you need to do it. We cannot address any citizen comments or questions during the rest of the meeting. When invited by the mayor, members of the public shall come forward, state your name and street address, and direct all comments to the mayor. Comments are typically limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is allowed. We start this with any items that are not on the agenda. If you have questions or comments about any items not on the current agenda, this would be the time to ask or comment.
I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. In that case, we'll go to item B, which are for items on the agenda. If you have any questions or comments about any items on the agenda, this would be the time to ask.
I see no hands raised at this.
Thank you. In that case, we will shut that portion of the agenda and move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve this consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to ordinances, resolutions, discussions, and action items. First item on the agenda is election of a council president.
Yes, Mayor, the newly updated charter, section 6.3 states that its first meeting each year, the council must elect a president from the membership. The president presides in the absence of the mayor and acts as mayor when the mayor is formed meeting.
Mayor, can I address the council?
Sure.
I just wanted to state that I appreciate the effort and time that Councilor Ward Mullen has done and put in as the council president. And I do also appreciate that every year we'll revisit this. I think in this time with newer counselors, a younger council, I would like to see some steady leadership, and I think that I would like to nominate Councilor Ward Mullen to serve again this year as the council president.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Counselors, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Motion carries.
I do want to say that it is, and, you know, I feel honored that I've been able to serve for the last 4 years and taking on this year of transition that next year in January of 2024, I look forward to other members of the council stepping up to that role. I think it's important to the extent that any counselor has the time, you know, in their schedule to take on that responsibility, that they have the opportunity to do that. So I just want to make that statement.
Thank you.
There you go, Kevin.
Okay. Item B, Han Creek Pump Station change order.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, before you are 2 change orders, number 9 and number 10. Change order number 9 is to provide and install an ADA ramp over by the Han Creek Pump Station. And change order number 10 involves the reinforced concrete around the wet well that was discussed when we approved the change order for the DAPA crane. And Gordon Monroe is on the line to provide further detail.
Hi, folks. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So change order number 9 is to add a ADA ramp at the end of the sidewalk. This was not in the original design. Because this is actually not a formal crossing. And so it's not required. Where you see the ADA ramps is at intersections or other formal crossings that have been designated. Sometimes there are mid-block crossings. You have one in downtown on Main Street. But that's a formalized process to designate that as a crossing. However, staff felt that because this is the end of the sidewalk right near the bridge, that it would be prudent to have a ADA ramp in this location. So that's why the change order was brought forward. And it deletes the 10 feet of sidewalk that was there and replaces it with the formal ADA ramp. Change order number 10 is the second part of the davit crane that we talked about last month. If you recall, last month, the davit crane equipment itself was approved so that we would have time to order it, because delivery times can be lengthy at this time. And this is essentially the foundation portion of that change order. So the foundation for the new davit crane and an area to put the pump down on. And last month, there was a question about the existing davit crane that was being replaced, and I've chatted with Brian, and he is reusing that at the wastewater treatment plant. So I know that was a question last month, so I thought I'd bring that up and let you know what was being done with that former davit crane. With that, are there any questions?
Where this ADA ramp is being put in at the end of that, right where you're saying at the end of the sidewalk going to the bridge. On the north side of the street, is there an ADA ramp there? Was that required when that sidewalk was put in?
There was the warning strip was put in over there because, again, it wasn't required because it wasn't a crossing, but it was thought to be a good thing to put in case people were going to continue walking across the bridge. It doesn't quite line up with this one.
But there is some sort of an ADA ramp on the north side where if someone does cross there on the south, they can get to
There
it.
is a, yeah, there is a warning strip, the truncated domes that are yellow, that's over on the north side.
Okay.
Right before the bridge.
Are there any other questions for Gordon? Regard to amendments? Okay,
I make a motion that the city council accept change orders 9 and 10 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Okay, item C, the Carlton Civic Building VE Design Rendering Review.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, in your packet, last meeting, council decided to eliminate 4 items. The top is cost saving items. They'll be cited in the change order number 1 as a reduction. You also asked for a number of items to have renderings and acoustic information. And that information is in your packet today. In addition, there were 3 pictures of the front of the building that are updated from the ones that I had included in the packet. They eliminate the power lines and they have Carlton Civic Building instead of City Hall on the front of it. Also, there is a more detailed summary on a subsequent sheet that talks about the additional items that will be involved in some of these, such as going back to planning commission or the additional permit review. So that's also in front of you today. That was not included in your packet. And Mark is here to speak to you in greater detail today.
Good evening.
Hey.
Hi, Mark.
Howdy.
Why don't you just move on over here and save yourself some time?
I know. Right. So if you guys don't mind, what I would like to jump into are items 5 through 8 that are on page 90 of your guys' packet. As Shannon mentioned, we had accepted items 1 through 4, which are pretty clear, easy, simple VE items to absorb into the project. Items 5 through 8 needed a little bit more background information for you guys to make a decision. And in addition to that, I'm going to share with you guys some images, but also some additional information regarding making these decisions to help inform that. Meaning, do any of these items have additional design services associated with them? Are there any planning commission review requirements that go along with accepting a certain item, or maybe a potential permit revision? So items 5, 6, 7, and 8 are going to be our focus tonight. We do have a number of other items that are listed kind of below the line that we're working through with Hallworth currently to get more firm pricing on, and we will be bringing them to you guys potentially with additional views and additional images to help make decisions later as well. But again, our focus tonight is just going to be on items 5 through 8. So I'm going to just jump ahead into item 8, which is the east-west canopy support with tiebacks. And I'm going to share my screen if I can. Yes. All right. Please let me know if you all can see that. I think you can. Great. Okay. So we're going to jump into item 8. And this is really dealing with just the canopies on the east and west portions of the building. Can you all see my cursor as I move it around?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, great. So I'm going to just zoom into this rendering here because it's kind of a nice rendering. It's high quality. These canopy supports are tied back to the building with this really nice angled plate steel, right? It's effectively ties back into the structure of the building. We have HSS posts, which just means steel posts that are embedded in the wall that take the support of this canopy. And what it does is it kind of creates a really nice streamlined look. The alternative, when we looked at it holistically, the biggest cost savings was to remove these altogether, but we realized that that's going to be a real hard sell. Planning Commission, we have, gotten some preliminary numbers back on removing these canopies altogether if we're looking to maximize savings. But at this point, really what we want to do is evaluate, what's something that's not going to really impact planning review, potentially permit review quite as much, and something that you will still get savings on. And the solution was to really highlight how these canopies are being supported. And the option is to go with what's called a tieback system. And, you know, I apologize, these images are straight out of our SketchUp model. They're not fully rendered, so the quality isn't quite as high, but you can still see the overall effect of what it does to the canopy. What it is it's an anchor rod that is tied and connected directly to the canopy structure itself. And then it's cantilevered back to a midpoint in between the windows and then tied back into the structure. There's some savings involved in this because we're able to sort of eliminate some of the HSS connections within the wall. It's kind of hidden structure stuff, and then tie back directly within the wood framing of the wall to make this work. What we found, I'm going to just open up my spreadsheet here, was that this item here was about roughly a $14,000 savings to do that. And I'm going to move back here real quick just to the image. So it's $14,000 savings to switch from the plate steel tiebacks to this rod tieback. And we're going to do it on the east and west sides of the building. Now, the one thing that does kind of impact things from an overall perspective is that it does change the way these canopies read. It actually almost kind of highlights the entry canopy as something that's a little bit different, which I kind of like. It kind of draws your eye to that central canopy. But the east and west canopies do have a little bit of a different vibe to them now. So looking at that kind of holistically, you know, thinking there's a $14,000 savings, it seems kind of like a no-brainer. Let's go ahead and take it. But one thing to keep in mind was that there are design costs associated with it because we have structural calculations, we have changes to documents. Our structural engineer, you know, it takes them, they would have to revise their drawings, et cetera. And similarly with architectural. So there's roughly about $6,000 of design costs included in that. And as of today, we were not sure if Yamhill County was going to allow us to move forward without getting a permit revision, which would have further kind of impacted the savings, overall savings of this particular item. But thankfully, we did hear back today from Yamhill County, and they have confirmed that there is no permit revision required for this. So that does save us some money. And what it looks like, really the only negative impact on this is the additional design costs. So when you take that into consideration, it's, you know, it's a little over $8,000 to save for a pretty minor exterior revision. And this is something that I don't want to say that we're recommending, but it is an easy option. It's something that we would fully be on board for making a revision to the drawings and getting a significant savings on the exterior of the building. So let's go back to that view here real quick. So this is a before. You can see that this is just the angled plate steel. And then we'll go to the new view that has the tieback rod. I'm just going to go to the next image as well. This is the front of the building. This is the rendering that you guys have all seen. And then this is the rendering with the tieback system. Great. Yes, go ahead.
The tiebacks, as opposed to the other system, is the stability the same? I mean, is it literally, are those tiebacks literally assisting to hold up the canopies?
Yeah, that's their only job. And, you know, I think there are some potential additional benefits to the angled plate steel. Part of it being, you know, sun shading for harsh angles at the top end of the window. You know, as you can see that we do have these canopies kind of resting at sort of an upper third point of the window. And that does allow for daylighting to come in. But when you have those kind of harsh angles for sun, they do provide some additional shading actually for that top portion. So by going to the tieback system, it actually eliminates some of that, but I think it's minimal. I don't think you guys are really going to even notice it, to be quite honest. And I think the tieback system would work just as well visually as the angled plate steel.
Okay, but I'm not talking about visually, I'm talking about stability. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty equal, one for one. There are some changes structurally within the wall. Actually, this version here, the reason you're getting savings is because it needs a little bit more of a beefy connection because it does have a stronger structural cantilever. It's got a shorter distance that it's moving up, whereas the cable tieback is higher. So it's got a larger area to work with for structural support, and we can eliminate some of the steel within the wall to support that.
Are these canopies solid metal?
No, what they are, well, they have a metal frame to them. And then the underside of the canopy is clad in wood.
It's what?
Clad in wood. So when you walk underneath the canopies, you're really only going to see wood siding. But from the face of the street, what you can see here is we actually have the frame of the canopy. It is in steel. And so there'll be moments within that frame that tie back. If you actually eliminated the wood underneath, you would see this rigid steel frame that actually holds it all together. And effectively, all that we're talking about right now is this tie back system to help control the cantilever weight of the canopy. It's here. Okay, so I think we have a couple more items to talk about. Unless anyone has any further questions about this, what I'd like to do is just kind of run through these and then we can get some further commentary at the end if you guys have any questions. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Great. Okay, so item number 5 is removing wood panel at the lobby. So what we have identified here is there's going to be no permit revision required to this. There's going to be no planning commission review because they didn't deal with anything on the inside of the building. Additionally, we don't think there's really any design costs on our end because I think that this is something that can be handled very straightforward with the selected contractor, Hallworth, in that we would just eliminate it from our interior views and we just kind of strike it. So there's really no associated design cost, but there is a lot of savings in material. That being said, the good news about this item is that it really is something that can be added back later and can be done fairly easily. We had talked about this internally with, on our construction calls, as well as I believe at the last meeting, that this is something that we could potentially review as an item that could, get funds for, fundraising efforts from the community to help install. So really what we're talking about now, and I realize there's some new counselors involved in this, is our main entry to the building. We have this really beautiful wood paneling that lines the main atrium, the double height space as you walk in. It's this really beautiful, warm material. And it has been a part of our design concept dating all the way back to 2019 when we had been working with the students. It was a goal to really bring this idea of the agricultural, the wine industry, the logging history of the city of Carleton, and really bring this tactile experience when you walk into the building that you're really fronted with immediately. You have this initial impression of wood and warmth that kind of radiates from the building. But there's significant savings to removing it and putting it into something that we can install at a later point in the project. So what I want to show you guys, and I think you're probably already flipping through the images, is what it would look like if we actually just remove the panels from the project at this point in time until we could potentially, hopefully, bring them back in the future. So the first option to really look at is, okay, let's just take them off, paint the walls white. We just have gypsum board. It's pretty stark. Yeah, I don't think you guys are going to love it. So we started playing around a little bit with adding some color to it, trying to soften it up, trying to warm it up a little bit. That feels a little bit better. This second image here. The last image really is taking it and kind of pushing it further into more painting it so it kind of reflects the same warmth, gives the idea of wood, the same idea as the wood paneling, but it's really just done with paint on the walls. Again, as I mentioned, this can easily be clad over in the future with the wood paneling. if funds are so available. And as of right now, I believe that we are looking at $14,400 for a savings amount on this item. Any questions you guys want before I jump on to the next one?
Is there any place there where you could do, I don't know, so, we're looking at this drawing here where it could be partially clad? Does that even make any sense?
Do partial clad, like maybe just the first floor? Almost, yeah, I mean, I think what you're getting here is you're going to lose a little bit of savings because you're still having trades on site who are going to need to install that. Are still going to need to order materials. So it might not be a, let's say, even if we identified a small area, maybe 50% of it, I don't think we would get 50% savings from it just because of, the mobilization for that trade to show up and install it. It's still there. So I think that you're probably looking at maybe a 20% savings for if you only install it that way. So what we would recommend is if it's something that, council is really concerned about, identifying $14,000, this is a location to do it, to save that money. However, in our opinion, it's not. What we're hoping to do is find those kind of funds as we work through further areas of the VE list with Hallworth, because it is pretty critical to the design, but we also understand that the constraints in place. So we're not going to kick and scream if you guys choose to go with the gypsum wallboard, but we didn't want to present the options, and our recommendation is obviously clearly to keep it at this point and identify savings later, but I want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to evaluate this and make it a reality if you need to. And this is what the image looks like currently.
In our packets, these pictures of the wood carvings, how do those relate? Because they're right with this particular feature.
I primarily put them in as a potential for what I believe Mark's going to talk about next, which is the balcony area. But those are pieces of our history that we would be looking to incorporate in that lobby area somewhere, whether it's on the wall or the balcony
In the
area.
historical pictures.
Yes, historical pieces, historical pictures.
So these came out of some building
They were
that
in,
were in a
City
building
Hall,
years
yeah.
ago.
yeah, they were,
Okay.
and we've been storing them.
Those in the pictures that we had hanging in the old,
City Hall building.
the
Yeah.
old council room. Yeah. So those could, I mean, using those in the hallway. That's, I guess, where I've always envisioned seeing those.
Yep. Yeah, and what we show here is we have a large saw blade that we've kind of indicated, and it's kind of a 1-for-1 for the large log slab that we just haven't integrated it into the rendering because it just needs to be photoshopped. But that's an option. The other option, I think what Shannon is alluding to, is that we do have another area of potential savings. We haven't gotten pricing back for it, but we wanted to present it here to you guys tonight so that you could look at it. And that is this balcony up here. Right now, we have a metal mesh screen that kind of provides a little bit of transparency to that second floor landing, which is really the waiting space upstairs before you get into the City Hall offices or the police station offices. And we have evaluated that metal mesh screen might be pricey. And so what if we just went ahead and actually made it a solid wall? Yes, you lose a little bit of transparency, maybe you lose a little bit of experience of volume between the two spaces, but the reality is that I believe, and the reason that those images are in there is that this also provides additional canvas for your interior when you make it a solid wall. Whereas when it is a metal mesh, really you can't really hang stuff on it without it being pretty tacky. So this really gives you another option either for signage or for additional art display that you guys currently have in your inventory. Is that correct, Shannon? I'm kind of inferring that based off the packet information.
Correct, is that when you
Okay.
walk in the front door, your eye is gonna be drawn to that balcony,
Yeah.
especially if it's a flat surface.
Mhm.
And so my thought was that if you chose to do something like this, there would be a place for us to do additional art. I'm not sure the pieces that I showed you are the right size, but it was an idea of what we could do because the eye is gonna go automatically there.
As Mark's saying, right now, he doesn't have the price savings of not using them.
There
That,
was.
yeah, that is correct. It's one that we don't have a number for yet, but it is one that we have identified that there will be some cost savings to it.
And it was one of the requests that we were doing these renderings, that the rendering be
Yeah.
done.
So in essence, that particular wall right there, somehow we could find somebody to duplicate the mural that's on the old police building,
Okay, good there.
you know, something of that.
Mhm. And then just real quick, I'm going to show you this without the wood paneling on the walls. And granted, you could see this as colored as well, rather than just white. But that's what the space looks like a little bit without the wood panels. So it really kind of draws your eye to that, saying, hey, we need something there.
It does. I would rather see artwork up there, I think, than a mesh.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Being a lot more work.
I don't really want to see people sitting up there.
Get it to be a
You know.
mess up there.
And people who are sitting up there probably would prefer that to be looked at.
Yeah. Well, we will continue to request VE pricing for this option from Hallworth. When we get firm numbers, we can present it to you guys, but I think that we're all on the same page that this is probably an easy one for us to pursue. And whether it relates to this wood paneling, I think is yet to be determined. I'm going to show you just a couple of views from the upper landing. So right now, this is looking down that main space. Where you have the beautiful wood paneling and this wood ceiling. As we continue to evaluate that material, this is effectively, and I apologize, straight out of our model, so the lighting is a little off. This would be if it was just white. Here's an option for color, and then here's another option for painting it a similar warm toned color as the wood. We are unable really to, at this point, eliminate the wood ceiling. Part of it is there's just a lot of structure that we're hiding. There's a lot of integration with light fixtures, et cetera. So we're not recommending removing that and having a drop ceiling, because in the event that we are able to, in the future, put back the wood siding, bringing that back in and having those two materials tie back together is going to be really integral. And we want to make sure that that has the capability to do that. And we don't have to then install a completely new ceiling in the future. So really what we're recommending is to maintain the ceiling here, which does tie back to a similar feeling that you have in your community room where you have the exposed wood ceiling, and then evaluate the material on the walls. Okay.
Thank you.
So I believe there is one more item, two more items, sorry. Two more items. One of them doesn't really take a whole lot of information on views, but let's scroll up here to your council chambers, community room. So we're evaluating looking at this back wall here, this slat wall that provides a nice wood backdrop for the council dais, any sort of presentation within the room, really kind of anchors the room together. What we have identified is that if we remove that and also put that as a gyp wall, we would have a rough savings of $13,720. So what would that look like if we eliminated that wood slat wall altogether? This is a view if we made it similar color to what we're doing with all of our entryways with the doors, and also kind of creates a dark backdrop to sort of help still anchor the room. We didn't really provide a view of this the same color as the wood. It just felt a little strange in the room. a little forced. So we just kind of kept this sort of iron color as the backdrop in replacing that wood wall. This is also another area that was discussed as a potential target for public fundraising. You could have folks carve their names on individual wood slats if we did it in the future. But the one benefit that we do lose if we eliminate that, and that is some of the sound control in the room. As you guys are likely aware in the prior council chambers, is that acoustics sometimes have a tendency to reverberate. In a larger room, it can potentially get a little echoey. We do have some warmer materials in the room with all the exposed beams and the flooring from above. But however, directly behind the council dais, typically we would recommend either we went with an acoustic panel of some sort, and what we had prior included was the wood slat wall. The wood slat wall has an integrated felt backer behind the wood to help sort of absorb and eliminate the reflection of acoustics in the room, to help kind of deaden the room a bit. And when we go back to just a simple gypsum wall, we do have a little bit more of a vibrant, acoustically vibrant, not socially, but acoustically vibrant room. So we might get a little bit more feedback or echo in the room. So that is kind of the downsides to that. But again, I think that it is something that can easily be added in the future without too much consternation on our side for how to do it. And we don't, again, this is similar to the lobby one. We don't really see a design cost associated with removing it. We would just effectively say, not included in our drawings, and then kind of move on. But this is a potential area for savings of $13,000. And then the last item, which is also included in this view, I don't think yes, it is included in here as well, is the partition panel that separates the two rooms together. For those on the council who are new to this, I'm going to quickly show you a floor plan of our council chambers and community room. We do have the option with this movable partition to break this space down into, instead of one large community room, we have a medium-sized space and a smaller space that fronts with all the storefront glazing. And that, I believe, is $38,000 just for the material of the panel itself, the movable partitions. So what we've identified is again, it's something that can be installed later without too much fuss at all from a contractor's perspective. But what we would still need to do is we would need to still install the track overhead and the walls. If we eliminated the track, it makes it much more difficult for a contractor to come in and install those panels later without adding potentially more cost on top of it. What we want to do is we want to maximize the cost savings rather than, offsetting something for the future, and then it's just going to cost more the second time around, if that makes sense. So by building these walls now, while you have the trades on site who are, providing framing and gypsum and finishing it out and all that, it makes much more sense to go ahead and keep the enclosures for the panels, but potentially delay ordering and purchasing the panels until a later date. But we would lose the functionality of breaking the space up into 3 different sizes. Okay, I think that are all the items on our list, correct? Shannon, is there any others that we wanted to talk about? I don't think we have images for anything else.
That is all the items for today. As we've discussed, this is an ongoing process throughout the life of the project. However, my understanding, Mark, is there is at least one thing on today's list that is a little time sensitive for a decision, and that is the canopies.
Correct. Yep.
And so if council wants to have a discussion about all of the items, or we could really use a decision on canopies. I'd like to discuss all of them. Okay.
Does anybody have any comments?
Really? Lots of comments.
I'm curious with the canopies, I don't even know if this is an option now, but if we would remove the canopies, how much will we save? Or remove altogether, because just supporting that is 14,000, so I'm curious how much would be just taken off.
Yeah, so great question. And we have evaluated that with Haworth. There's that's a layered response. And the short way to answer it is it's substantial. It's a lot to remove the canopies. You really could only remove, let me go back to that image. Really, you could only remove the east and the west. You'd still have to maintain the one in the middle. The problem with that, though, is that we're reducing so much of the coverage along Main Street. There are requirements from site design review that we have to provide pedestrian shelter along Main Street. And we would be eliminating it to an extent that we'd be beyond what is allowed, not just per code, but allowed for a minor variance. So it pushes us into the major variance category, which then we would have to go back in front of the planning commission to get that approved. It's something that we can continue to evaluate if council wants to. Gosh, I want to say it was like 90% or over 90% of what's required by the site design review. So we'd be really pushing the envelope, kind of literally, with what we're allowed to do on the front of the building for pedestrian shelter. So we didn't really take it as one that we thought was completely viable from a planning commission standpoint. But if you all feel comfortable with it, we're happy to keep investigating it. But it is a substantial savings to eliminate them altogether. It's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's within a ballpark that is probably less than half of that. But again, I can't really say firm numbers at this point. We can continue to get those numbers from Haworth if you guys want.
I don't think that's,
And just to clarify, we have those canopies in the front of the building because there's an ordinance or some sort of plan. Or there's
Correct. Yeah, it's required for our design review through, there's kind of a lot of overlapping narratives here. One, we have to have the canopies as part of planning commission, right? It's part of our site design review process. It's one of those items that, from the city's perspective, it's the city hall for the building. If we're doing things that we're requiring other buildings to provide, but then we're not providing that in our own building, that kind of sends the wrong message to the rest of the community. However, it is not inexpensive. And so while, yes, it is required and we can still apply for the variance of that, there's also the overlapping narrative that this building is becoming an anchor or providing at least a narrative anchor to the east side of Main Street and sort of connecting it back down into the language and character of Main Street as you go west from Highway 47. And that's been kind of our narrative all along, that the overall design quality of this building would fit in with downtown Main Street guidelines. Now, this building isn't on downtown Main Street, but it evokes that same sense of quality. And if we remove the canopies, we kind of further push it from that sort of design narrative. But all the options are still available. You can definitely pursue them if needed.
That is one thing the council did talk about extensively with this, is that this would be an example of what we'd want design to look like for the future of Carlton.
Yeah.
And also to serve, as he said, the anchor to pull Main Street further down from just the downtown corridor extended.
It's both utilitarian, and that's why the site design is required, right? So we have shelter, rain and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
And also it's an aesthetic feature. And for, as just we were discussing, bringing all the structures together, some sort of uniformity.
And as Mark also said, we require it in our code of everyone else, but we're going to exclude ourselves from it.
Yeah, and I like that it demonstrates that a modern building can still have
this link to the other, to the west side and to the old days. And I like the tiebacks because they look old fashioned. I think some of the original ones on Main Street might have tiebacks, don't they? Seems like
They
they
do.
do.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
That's why we pushed early on about the brick.
Yeah,
I mean, we
Yeah.
pushed and pushed for
Mhm.
the brick and the size of the windows to look like the old buildings.
yeah, that looks
Yep.
good.
So, I don't know if we're voting on it or not, but my vote would be for the tiebacks
Mhm.
and leave the canopies
Mhm,
and go with that.
me too.
Yeah.
I think
Backs and canopies.
definitely the canopies. I'm a little on the fence. I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, Carolyn, and thought about that, about some of the other structures on the other side of Main Street having those tiebacks. Just, it adds another feature, it's the way that what do we call those, from the original structure?
Fins,
Mhm.
Yeah, that kind of just, makes it one solid piece. This, then your eyes looking up at those tiebacks. So that's my thought, like, how's that gonna look? But
Mhm, but the
What
fins
other-
look very modern. The fins
yeah,
look
that's
modern.
true. What other buildings are there that have the tiebacks?
I don't know, I'd have to go look.
I would prefer money to be spent in the community room instead of, regardless of design and how we want things to look, I'm looking more having a space for the community and I think having room dividers is a almost essential piece of it.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
I think
especially if the total cost of all the
Well,
canopies would cover the wall, lighting wall.
I agree. I know Council President asked to talk about all of them. It sounds like the most pressing one is the tiebacks and the canopies. So I don't know if we feel like we can settle that. And then it seems like Mark's saying there's room to continue researching the other options and items. I don't know.
Oh,
If
yeah,
Council wants to
absolutely.
decide on all four of these tonight, that's fine with me too.
Well, I don't think we have to decide like on the wood paneling tonight or the grading and that part in there, but I think the community room for sure, I feel really strongly that we shouldn't be messing with cutting back on that community room, because that community room,
Was the
we
promise.
promised the community that it's their building too, and it's their space, that's their space, and the divider is so important to that. And then also the slats in the front, not only are aesthetically appealing, but they're very functional from an acoustic standpoint. If we remove that, then we're going to be putting ourselves into acoustic issues in that room that could end up costing as much to, solve as what those slats provide now. So I just think, it's just my opinion that we need to leave that room alone as far as cutting back on it.
those items can be added later, and right now,
What can be added later?
those slats on the wall, that divider wall can be added later. And right now, you've got the community screaming and yelling on the price tag of the building. And that if we can cut a little bit out and save some to get it down,
How much are we really saving?
well, but it's still
If you
dollar
amortize-
figure.
I know, if you amortize that over a 20-year loan, what are you really saving?
I will say that as I've described what we're planning with this and what the original plan was, when you tell people that they're going to have a community room that they can have two activities going there at the same time, they're pretty happy about it. And I haven't heard anybody worrying about the cost of it.
The cost of a $7 million building.
Well, there are
I've been
people that
walking
are
through the
worried.
wrong neighborhood, because I've been hearing a lot of people in town yelling about the cost of this $7 million building.
These items here aren't gonna make, at the end of the day, gonna make that much difference, to be honest.
Could I provide some alternative perspective as well? We have focused on the cost of the building. And we know it's more than we would like it to be. And as we look at this building, I want you to remember, we looked at a 30-year window for staffing needs, for what this community would need, which is why it's a little larger than what we talked about in 2018. Community talked about in 2018. And the price per square foot that came in for this building with the parking lots is $565 a square foot. The estimate you had for FFA in 2018, you had three, one for a one-story building that was much less square footage, a two-story building, and renovating and expanding. And the cheapest square footage for that one-story building was $568. So if this price several years later is still less than the square footage estimate you got in 2018. This was to set a design standard of what you want the future of Carleton to look like. It also sets an economic development. When people come in and look at investing in the city of Carleton, that's something we discussed, is they want to see what Carleton wants to look like and whether it's worth putting money in the community. Portrait, of course. I know we don't have the luxury of just focusing on one building. We have to focus on water, we have to focus on sewer, we have to focus on parks, we have to focus on a building that will hold the staffing needs we project for 30 years of our community growth. I just want to remind, because sometimes when you get focused on a number, sometimes it's hard to see the rest of that. And I just want to remind again, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, so I apologize, but we have received over $550,000 from the county ARPA funds for our sewer and headworks. We've received $5.8 million for our wastewater treatment plant. We've received $2.2 million for sanitary on Grant Street and hopefully Main Street, if depending on where bids come in. We received $1.5 million for West Main Street. That's just in the last 12 months. That's over $10 million. We also have Panther Creek at $2.5 million. And we just finished the transmission line at a little over $7 million, which is just almost $10 million. We have smaller grants, 2 SCA grants, one for East Main, one for West Main, each for $100,000 respectively. And we received our own share of ARPA funds for $477,000 that will go to the wastewater treatment plant. That's another $677,000 in smaller grants. Between the $10 million we received this year, the almost $10 million that we're currently in progress on our infrastructure, those smaller infrastructure grants, we're putting over almost $20.5 million into our infrastructure and grant funding that we're not having to put into loans. We also received another $175,000 for our TSP update, $33,000 towards our comprehensive plan update, and another $28,000 for our PD for law enforcement, which is another $236,000. So again, you're just over $20.5 million in different aspects. Again, you also really emphasized you wanted this building not for us to be outgrown as soon as we moved into it, that it was for 30 years. Our current Portland State projections that just came in, as population estimate is 2,324 people. Over 30 years, and that's if we have no other growth. Over 30 years, that's about $126 per person per year. So I know you see the number in front of you, and that's important. And it's important to look at all of these. But I also want to make sure that we don't lose, as we look at the numbers, we don't lose the purpose of the building of setting a design standard, setting an economic standard, being able to provide for our community for 30 years, and what we've been able to do on all of the other aspects of services that we provide the community that we won't have to do once for. Just as you continue to deliberate.
Thank you.
I think it's pretty easy for me to just say with the tiebacks, let's take care of that one because it seems time sensitive. I feel like there's still room for conversation on the other ones. And it feels like we have time, but that's just my opinion. It feels like I'm in favor with keeping the canopies and saving the $14,314 by adding the tiebacks. It feels like there's kind of agreement amongst council for the most part. I just feel like we're at the point where it'd be nice to kind of check some of these off or say we need to talk further or move that down the road.
I'm sorry, Counselor Skipper, what amount of money did you say?
The number 8 east-west canopies supported with tiebacks 14,314 with the caveat that it's going to cost $6,000. So it's an $8,000 rough savings. So, but it's still, they're structurally, they're the same. Aesthetically, I think they look better, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's how
It
I
seems
feel.
like an easy $8,000 savings to me.
I think the tiebacks give us a more of a classic look.
Yeah, the old fashioned look.
And saving money.
So.
Do we need a roll call vote on this item or what?
We would need a motion first.
Or
We
motion?
do need a motion.
But if,
But I think
Hold
people
on a
want to talk
second.
more.
Wait a minute. Okay,
yeah, so, I mean, I would agree that we could move things out, but I think we should, in this motion, set a time that we're going to make those decisions. I don't think we should be prolonging it for months. I mean, I think the next meeting, we should all have time to be thinking about this and just make decisions.
And that's the community room and all the other changes, yeah.
No, I
can
took,
agree to do that.
Yeah.
That's only on these items here, because this lower list is a continuation that's gonna go on
Well,
for.
there might be, yeah, but I'm talking about what we're talking about tonight.
I know it was something I asked before, but I think it's I like to look at the big picture and the macro, not the micro. Of little things that, like, we're saving $8,000, but that's such a material amount. Compared to the building, we are paying much more in interest, just. I think looking at a whole picture is a lot easier because we're gonna save $8,000 now, but then later we're gonna be like, oh, we don't have $30,000, so we can put the divider in the room. So I think just making those little decisions is worse than making like we have 5 or 6 here. Can we just decide now? Instead of pushing things back and never deciding on them. I don't like it personally.
yeah, I'm open to that too. I mean, let's just get some direction in what we want to do. I mean, Mark and them are going to continue to value engineer this project for a year or more. So this is not a conversation that's going to die. It'll probably be a monthly topic on our agenda. So if we're ready to go one by one, I'm happy to. But
Also, counselors, when we can keep you guys apprised on a monthly update where these are at. Really how it relates to the construction process is critical path. We get to a point where we have to make a decision on whether a product needs to be ordered or is installed. There's, if it's not installed, then it costs later to order it later. So what we can do is when we work out the schedule with Haworth, we can actually tie in with this list when a drop dead, decision date required would be. And that might help inform you guys in your decision-making process. Obviously, you don't have to make all the decisions tonight, but as you guys have mentioned, the sooner the better. It kind of gets it off your plate and you guys can look at it. But if adding dates to this helps you, then we are happy to add that as well.
Okay.
So. Again, I mean, I could agree on moving some of these, but may perhaps tonight, not even making a decision, but I'd like to hear from everyone about just philosophically, how you feel about removing things from the community room, which is for the community. Just, not that we necessarily have to make that decision tonight, but just philosophically, what is your point of view about it?
Yeah, I've been pushed back against removing community things, and I think a lot of the things we remove are either community room or community spaces. And I mentioned this before, I don't see a lot of upstairs or things like in the public safety, things that could remove there. I only see community room and community spaces. So I don't know why we're only removing there.
There are a lot of items on here that we don't have firm pricing on, like exterior doors, that's an entire building. Windows, that's an entire building package. So a lot of the other spaces, we don't have the wood paneling upstairs, it's just gypsum board. And so that may be why you're seeing a little bit of difference there, because it's a little more basic upstairs.
Basically, you've already taken into consideration some of these and you're going with the less expensive options for some of those areas that are not generally open to the public, that are much more utilitarian.
The intent was to put the finer finishes in the public facing spaces.
Exactly.
Philosophically, to answer your question, I completely agree. I don't want to remove things from the community room that benefit the community. So the divider is one of those things. Yeah, it's a big price tag and it'd be super awesome to be like, hey, there's $40,000 or roughly $40,000 that we're trying to save. But again, it is the community's building. So I philosophically, I agree with you. That doesn't necessarily relate to me with aesthetics and what does that look like to the eye, you know what I mean? I think that's where I get a little bit more, we talked about the community room slat walls, so I could, if the argument is, there's no other options to acoustically make that work, then yeah, maybe we keep that. I guess aesthetic stuff is not that important to me necessarily. I think it's especially with that lobby, I think that there's ways, you know what I mean, with the barrier wall and the to make that look better. So I think that answers your question. I would be in favor of keeping the community divider. I mean, at this point in time, I think I'd have to, I saw that study that Mark provided about acoustics, but it was a foreign language to me. So it's kind of hard to, you're not gonna have we can't compare the old council chambers to this new building. It's not gonna be a concrete wall behind us. Look at what we're dealing with right now. And so that's where it's kind of, I'm hesitant to say, let's keep it all because it's in there and you know what I mean? I want it to look nice, absolutely. But I think it's our duty and responsibility to also, it's as painful as it is every month to sit here and look at every VE item and say, man, when can't we just agree on, we're trying to knock this cost down as best as we can. So that
If we have to go back later and add things to the community room, isn't that gonna cost more?
Okay.
Wouldn't it be more cost effective to install it right the first time? Whatever that is,
My fear with projects like that too is that we say, oh, we'll do it later, and later never gets there. Yeah, it's my view.
and I think that would be the one room out of the whole building.
So then maybe we should quit putting our focus on these items and start working on this bottom list and come up with $30,000 for the divider or the amount of money we need for the clad walls and all that stuff. Start cutting away out of the top floor,
and that's
police department and.
where my mind was going is maybe Councilor Brandale was pointing is, I know we like macro micro things, but maybe the community center gets we leave the community room alone. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm just saying. Let's stop focusing there and let's start down here. Start cutting away, take away some of the stuff from upstairs that, then maybe someday it does get upgraded, eventually countertops will wear out and you're gonna have to redo them. So then maybe you upgrade them at that time.
So am I understanding correctly that you're saying, let's not even consider right now taking these things out of the community room and instead focus on this other list here?
Well, what I'm suggesting is maybe if we focus on this other list, we're gonna get more money out of this, which then we don't have to mess with the community room. I'm willing to go either way with it, but I'm just saying, maybe we need to pull the money out of someplace else. The police department, the upstairs part of the building. And then, as Jeremy says, we can leave the community room as it is and go with that. I understand it's a community room and the community wants, and they have their input and all that. But I still feel that it's our job to govern the cost.
I could agree with that, that we can look at savings elsewhere and see how much we can offset.
Right, that's what I'm suggesting.
So let's keep 6 and 7 and switch 8 to canopies supported with tiebacks.
Is there a motion? Do we all agree?
And then we'll revisit the lobby as things progress, maybe when
Yeah.
the mesh price comes back, we can look at that as a holistic kind of
We
approach.
have the pricing, so we can.
Not on
determine-
the barrier walls, I guess, what
Oh,
I'm talking
yeah.
about upstairs.
Yeah, and that's the one
But I
down
mean, we
here,
all
that's
kind of
the
agree on that.
wood frame pony wall down here, 24. We can tell the difference between the metal and the sheet rock.
The one benefit to doing it in steps is one is constantly evaluating the project since they come in. But the other benefit to doing in steps rather than wholesale is you can always start the discussion of why. Why do we need to cut this? Do we need to cut this? Is it absolutely necessary? So you always hear me say, why are we doing something? And so you can, that's one of the benefits to remind when you restart these conversations is why.
And one thing to add to this too, in terms of the fundraising part of this component of this project, is that the community, just using the community room as an example, I think that that's an area that could be really ripe for donation. Someone that wants to put a substantial amount of money, donate a substantial amount, and they want to focus on something like the community room. And that would be later. There's no promises about that, but there's the opportunity for it.
And I want to talk about fundraising before we end this discussion.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, that's one of the things we keep forgetting as we're talking about here is that we aren't looking at this. We keep forgetting that we're gonna be doing fundraising. We're not just gonna be building the building and, okay, folks, we're all gonna pay in. That we are looking at it as something that we hope we'll be getting outside assistance for, so. It's not necessarily all just gonna come from the community.
So it sounds like the primary question we're grappling with tonight is that $8,000, approximate $8,000 savings for the tiebacks. A good why? Is it a good reason to cut?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Is it a good reason to do that?
Is it a good reason to change?
I feel that
Is
it's
it
a
a
good
good
reason.
value to the project
Yes.
without taking away your intents? Of setting economic development standards, setting design standards, providing space for 30 years to provide services for this community.
Yeah, I think for design standards, it's an important statement from the city. This is what our building looks like. It's trying to remember the old heritage.
Yeah, as it's been brought up that if we say, no, we don't want canopies and our building isn't like that, but you've got to have your building this way. I mean, that isn't good.
It'd be inappropriate to do that.
Yeah.
And I suspect that our planning commission would explain that to us.
Point that out to us, yes.
Mhm.
So then at this time, can I move to make a motion that we go with the tiebacks for number 8 and revisit 5, 6, and 7?
Are you making that motion?
Yes. And I don't know if that's the proper language or not, but that's what I'm doing. Okay.
Counselor Grant, are you talking about revisit that the next meeting that we have? 5, 6, and 7?
I didn't put a time to say next month, but we could put it as of, say that as of,
So the motion would
would read as revisit 5, 6, and 7 next month.
I think it would be best just to make your motion on the action items that you're taking action on. Because not taking action is saying we're gonna address it next month. So I would recommend
Okay,
limiting your motion to the action item.
and we'll eliminate the 5, 6, and 7, and just go with
Number 8.
number 8, going with the tiebacks instead of the fins.
I heard you about 5, 6, and 7. So as we will have our pre-construction meeting on Thursday, I'll work with Mark and Hallworth to get timelines associated when we need to make these decisions. And then we never heard you tonight about revisiting possibly next month about 5 through 7. So I'll take that internally.
Can I make a point real quick? So is that done? Or we got a motion on top floor, sorry.
Yeah, we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that's the tiebacks and the canopies.
About the tieback.
Yeah.
Still have canopies and we're using tiebacks.
Okay. What's your question?
So it feels like to me, for the sake of moving forward, there's pretty good consensus on 6 and 7 to say remove them from the VE list. Am I wrong on that versus revisiting them again next month? I feel like I've heard from most everybody in the room.
I would say remove them, and if for some reason it is important to know timing though. For when the drop dead dates for ordering and that type of thing. But
action can be taken tonight, even if it doesn't have to be taken.
Well, that's what I was kind of saying. It felt like there was consensus that they wanted those 2 items to stay. So why are we kicking that down the road?
Yeah, I don't think we should, yeah,
Okay.
I would just not talk about mineral anymore. Motion.
I don't know. if you do that.
Basically, we're agreeing to leave 6 and 7 alone, that we will not do anything with them. They will stay.
So I will make a motion to leave 6 and 7 in the community room.
Right, we don't alter the original plan for the flat wall and the room divider. We want to keep those in our original plan.
Yes, that's what I'm motioning, to leave the slat wall and leave the room divider, item 6 and 7.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 1, okay, motion carries. Alrighty, any more discussion?
How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great, thanks.
He's getting ready to run.
No, we'll be doing this a lot.
Okay. So Shannon, did you have?
The last thing I want to roll on is civic building issue is to talk briefly about private fundraising. The council heard Rick Hinkes last year and agreed to have him lead a private fundraising campaign. He is back with a background with Oregon Symphony and fundraising there. And we started just very informally, just scraping the surface of having initial conversations about what that might look like, ideas that we might have. And again, very informally, it's Rick, it's myself, Christie's been to a couple of them, and Kevin and Chief have been to a couple of them. This is going to get much more intense project timeline. My energies, Christie's energies are gonna be pulled towards financing as well as project. Not quite as intense as a project manager, but we're gonna be keeping our hands on it quite a bit, monitoring things. So I would like council to, anybody who's interested in getting involved, I know there's at least 2 who have expressed interest in getting involved in the private financing campaign, a couple of council liaisons. If they don't want to say their names, I can say it for them. But for them to step in, provide updates to council about that private fundraising, decide what that looks like. We're not talking at this point in time, we're talking about more of a informal fundraising and not a very formalized citizen group. That's changed, but right now I'm asking for some council liaison help so that we have this one item to where our energies might be more needed in this project.
So when you were mentioning the two people, is that myself and Grant?
Yep.
Okay.
Glad you read between those lines.
Those fundraisings be to directly to the whole building or specific areas of the building?
So that's something that the committee has talked about. It could be both, and we don't want to exclude anybody. And again, these are very preliminary discussions. So we don't want to just, we don't want to exclude anybody who wants to donate, rounding up their utility bill $5 to donate to the building. We want them to feel as valued as somebody who gives several $1,000s. We have options of, like Council President mentioned, about donating to the community room or donating to the room divider. There's all kinds of creative ways that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be both. It could be a mixture of both.
The one thing I would mention with all of, and I'm willing to get involved, I suspect that most of us are at some level or another. So the one thing that I would caution on that and ask, how does that affect it? Because we hear about it all the time, is the out of order meetings.
Right. Please step in. I would recommend appointing 2 primary liaisons, maybe, and then as you get educated on the movement, other people can take other roles, but having 2 or 3 people to be able to consistently go to the meetings and then take it.
And 2 is probably better than 3, just with the size. But the more separate roles can be, the safer it is, regarding avoiding or
Yes.
all the stuff we want to avoid.
So if you have 2, you avoid that.
It's much safer. And 3 is technically not a quorum, but 3 participating council members and 1 council member attending as a member of the public, that's, you then have a quorum. But staying further away from the quorum number is.
And just because there's 2 primary going to the meetings and reporting back doesn't mean not everyone certainly get the word out at soccer games or baseball games or park activities, whatever. One of the things we want to collaborate with the CBA. It's a true
What's the
partnership.
man's name again? That's the
Rick Hinkes.
Pincus. How much time does he have to donate to this effort?
Well, he spoke to council and said he was going to donate. It's not been like we meet every week for 2 hours at a time. It's really been very informal at this point.
We haven't really had a kickoff yet.
No, just more of, oh yes, we have this other aspects of this project and it makes sense.
There's some form of mechanism for recognizing donors.
That's something we've discussed. We've discussed many different, again, it does not have to be one item that does recognition. We could have multiple items. People have sold bricks. You've seen that in buildings. Hatfield Center has Hatfield Center has Edge Class, the building that they just did in Newport. They've done it. We've also talked about categories, fun categories that maybe we could do that means helping or funding categories, and we've been, I'm looking between 500 and 1,000. It's the vineyard category or something. I'm making it up. Something fun. We did see when I showed the city of Columbus, Ohio, when they did that park, they had those plaques in the landscaping honoring the donors. So it, again, you want to take in cost into consideration because you have to buy the material in order to honor the donor. But there are multiple ways.
Well, I guess what I would say right now is that if Shirley and Grant have already volunteered, to get them together with Rick.
Good to go.
Yep.
Let's be fair, they showed interest and so we're probably 3/4 volunteered, a quarter voluntold.
Well, I'm thinking if they could get together with Rick and at least get started, you know, and if it became more than they could volunteer or donate, why, you know, one of us could fill in, come in and take over or whatever. But that might be a good way to start, is just get two of us, start talking to them and see from there. But
So we need to be officially appointed.
It's very informal. I think we could just do it from as fun. They're volunteering.
Okay, thank you.
They'll just trying to take your volunteers.
well, you said you wanted to. So if that works out,
So my next step is I will work on coordinating a meeting between Rick and all of us. All of us being.
the three of you,
Yes, Counselor Erickson, Counselor Ward Mullen.
start there.
Yeah.
Because there might be stuff that if, you know, any of us came up with an idea that we thought might work, we could at least reach out and work on it independently, maybe from 3 other people.
And there's gonna be other fun aspects of this project. What's been brought up is a time capsule, so there could be another opportunity to work with the community on it. We talked about reclaimed wood that we have from old city buildings, that we could work on a partnership with maybe the Yam Hill Historical Society. They have a wood planer, to see if we can have an opportunity there. So,
I actually know the guy that runs that shop.
cool.
Yeah.
Did my next door neighbor.
Oh, this is another one. It's
Okay.
runs the wood shop out. The one out in the historical building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim used to work at Par Lumber. He runs part of the wood shop out there.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's opportunities to have fun with this project, not just talk about what we have to do.
Okay, are we ready to move on to another item or?
I don't know, does Mark have anything else to say?
Mark, do you have, thank you.
I do not, thank you.
Run while you can.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. All righty. Resolution number 2023-334, appointing assistant city manager as budget officer for FY 24.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Mayor and Council, we have a resolution before you tonight to appoint the Assistant City Manager as the Budget Officer for the upcoming fiscal year. Ms. Martinez, would you like to add anything else?
I do a good job. I'm just kidding. I'm holed away because it's so small in there. No, I'm excited for this year, already setting the budget sheets. The budget calendar was in your consent agenda, this packet, so you might want to get those dates in your calendar for those special meetings, but it's going to be a fun year.
I move that the city council approve and authorize the mayor to sign resolution number 2023-334 to appoint the assistant city manager as the budget officer for fiscal year 2024.
I second it.
Okay, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. Resolution, item E, resolution 2023-335, extending workers' compensation to volunteers.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a housekeeping item required by CIS, our insurance provider, that every year we amend our resolution to include the current year. And so we're asking that council approve and authorize the mayor to sign resolution 2023-335, extending the compensation to volunteers of the city. This covers police reserves and non-public safety, public officials performing non-administrative tasks, park and recreation volunteers, clerical support, and establishes a process to add volunteers as we go through the year.
Thank you.
Wasn't this basically, we did this last year? didn't
We have to do it every year. Yeah. So do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution number 2023-335, workers' compensation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Brings us to item F, Planning Commissioner appointment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a vacancy on the planning commission since Mr. Graham had left his appointment on the planning commission. We have 2 applicants for that position. They have been diligent and sticking around with us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
That is Robin and Noel.
This is always a tough one, if I may, for me, because it's. You always feel like you're choosing between 2 people who are volunteering their time to serve on the planning commission. And so it always feels difficult for me because they're both sticking their names out there. They're both, applying for this, and I think.
Stepping up.
And stepping up, and I applaud that and I thank them for that. It's just, it's always, you got one position and you got 2 people. I don't like it. We could have more.
Is there a limitation on what our total number is?
Yes.
That's all I
Yes,
got.
there is. You have it.
Set. Planning. Member for that set.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes with these commissions, there is. Turnover, unfortunately. So there's always future opportunities.
Do we want to have any visiting from the 2 applicants? Would you like to hear what any comments from Robin? Robin and Noel, would you be interested in just speaking to the position a little bit and your interest in it? Okay.
Sure. Noel, you want to go first, or I will?
Sure. Thanks, Robin. I couldn't quite hear what you were saying just a few minutes before. So if you had asked me a question, you'll have to repeat it.
Just asking if you wanted to say anything about your interest in applying for this position.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I guess a little bit about myself. I identify as a mother of 6 kiddos. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, a small business owner here in Carlton. I'm a board member on the Carlton Business Association. And for my full-time work, I'm a communications and engagement professional. My husband, Nick, and I moved to Carlton during 2020, right before the big kind of pandemic shutdown. We had a really hard time getting to know Carlton at first because of that. And it's been really nice over the past year or so, really getting to know, see the community come alive. Everyone we've come into contact with throughout the city has done a really incredible job of showing us what makes Carlton such a great little town. And we really love it here in the almost 4 years that we've been here now. In terms of why I'd like to be on the Planning Commission, I love the idea of being able to get into the details of planning for the future of Carlton. I was able to participate in at least 2 of the Envision Carlton meetings, and unfortunately I missed the boat on the most recent survey that was available. I have a lot of exposure to planning topics and nuances through my work with the city of McMinnville. Most of my work for them includes promoting civic involvement and public education on city projects. I take what I do for them is I take complicated and sometimes and often kind of boring subjects, and I simplify them so that our community members can understand what's happening around the city. That's such an important piece of the work that I believe that cities do. And I really think I could bring value to, this governing body as well as our residents here in Carlton. So while I would still be learning in some capacity, I would certainly be learning about Carlton's needs specifically. I am familiar with the landscape of the planning world, and I'm interested in being able to learn and share with community members. I would love to serve and be part of shaping Carlton for everyone. And although I'm a newer member of this community, I would be really excited for the opportunity if given the chance.
Thank you. Robin, comments?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I would just also want to say to all of you who are voting that I support you in making the decision for the person who you feel is the best person and will add the most. And I understanding that you want to have a balance of people who are in the Planning Commission that have different perspectives and things that they can add. And please don't, take whatever weight there might be on choosing between one of us. Noelle is obviously very well suited for this, and hopefully you'll think that I am as well. I am retired. I worked in community service, social service, worked for YCAP for many years. I'm deeply committed to community. I've lived in Carlton 30 years and have been involved with city things. I've been attending city council meetings and planning commission meetings and been involved on the committee for the updating of the comprehensive plan. I feel well connected in the community, and I feel particularly passionate about bringing the community into our processes, the city's processes, and having this transparency and this relationship between the city and its inner workings and our vision, and having the people in the community being an active part in that. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, hard part, guys.
Are we voting or are we making a motion?
Well, how do we do this? The recommendation of the motion is to move that the city council appoint the planning commission, completing the term vacated by Commissioner Graham expiring December 31st.
So it is a motion.
And so just for clarification, this would be a 1-year term essentially, and then they'd have to
And then up for
reapplication.
which is the next item.
Do we have a motion?
I move that the city council appoints Noel Naya to the planning commission, completing the term vacated by Commissioner Graham, expiring on December 31st, 2023.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Hey,
Right,
Aye.
again, it's tough.
Opposed? How many votes do we have then? Can we do a roll call? Sure.
You can always do a roll call.
All right, Mayor Watkins, how do you vote?
Robin?
I'm sorry.
You know.
that'd be a no.
That would be a no.
Council President Shirley Ward Mullen,
No.
Counselor Kevin Skipper,
Aye.
Counselor Jeremy Brendel,
Aye.
Counselor Grant Erickson,
Yes,
Counselor Thompson Riser,
No,
Counselor David Samuel Hill.
Aye.
So it's a 4-3.
What?
4 aye, 3 nay.
Or no, Ellen. Okay. 7.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Passes. Ready? Thank you. And welcome. Alrighty. Planning Commissioner reappointments.
Mayor and council, we have two. It's like notes in front of me.
I didn't get it. So it must be.
Robin?
Jennifer Nordstrom and Vin Van. They would like to extend their service another 4 years, expiring on December 31st, 2026.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So do they automatically get preference if they say that they're gonna wanna serve another 4-year term?
We always ask at the end of their 4-year term if they wish to be reappointed. Yes, our option is to. Yep, your options are to not reappoint either and post the vacancy, and appoint one and post the vacancy. Yes, and their term limits, members shall not serve more than 3 full terms consecutive, so there is a limit on.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if it's the appropriate time, but it just feels like that was kind of a heavy vote and it's like, it absolutely had nothing to do. It's just, you put you in a tough situation of,
Yeah.
you can't, I don't know either of the candidates personally, so.
I know,
They're
I
both
wish-
extremely qualified is what I'm trying to say, and I hope there's no hard feelings
yeah,
on the other end.
I wish we could have
Yeah.
discussed them a little bit or voted without them watching, but I guess that's part of transparency.
Yes.
Okay.
There is one more commissioner that we hear from, whether or not they would want to be reappointed, and so there may be something coming for us to you next month, whether that be a reappointment or a vacancy.
So yeah, with that being said, I don't feel like we should say no to somebody who's currently been serving and willing to volunteer either more. So I'm ready to make a motion, but I'm gonna leave it open for more discussion before.
I would, just my comment on both of these candidates is that they have been very diligent, I think. Both of these counselors, commissioners have been very diligent. They've been to the meetings, they're interested, they're engaged in what's going on, and they came in at a time when we were miserably short of commissioners and have done, have gone through some pretty rough times, so. And stuck with it. That's my comment. I hope.
I'll move to the city council to reappoint Jennifer Nordstrom and Jen Dandy to the planning commission, extending their service for 4 years and expiring on December 31st, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ask the question.
Opposed?
Oh,
Motion carried. Go ahead.
Shannon, there's a third commissioner that you have not heard from yet, whether they want to extend their time, and just if they do not wish to extend their time, that position has to be posted. Yes, it can't be held, or
We will post it and we'll also let the other know that. it's posted.
All righty. I think that's the worst vote we've had to take on. I mean, most and fattest one. Okay, item H, 2023 meeting dates.
Yes, I apologize. I should have brought this when I brought the other adjustments to the 2023 meeting dates to the council a month or so ago. I neglected to point out that August 1st, first Tuesday in August, we put the National Night Out. So last year we moved it 1 week to allow for National Night Out and for us not to be able to enjoy those activities and participate in those activities. We had wonderful crossing guard. So my recommendation is that we do that again and move it to August 8th rather than August 1st to avoid that conflict.
Works for me.
Is there a motion?
Do you need a motion or can it just consensus?
Consensus would be fine.
Consensus, okay. Good.
I'm okay with it.
and we'll send out a list.
Yes.
So is this National Night Out always on that
Second Tuesday
second?
or first Tuesday. I don't know.
First Tuesday, so we just need to make it where our meeting is.
I need to do a better job of remembering that when I'm looking at the dates for next year. So I always try to look forward towards conflicts with holidays. That's why I brought those other months to you. Those adjustments.
What other? What are you talking?
You've already nodded your head for this.
July.
July.
Yeah. I got it.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, July.
so yeah, today,
Well, I can tell you right now, July 11th, I won't be here. Yeah, I know that.
We knew that.
we would come into that agenda.
Yeah.
I think that's where we dump all the stuff on Grant that we don't want to deal with. Yeah.
All the committee assignments.
Got it. All righty, item I, future work sessions for Council Goal 2, housing and livability.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Council, at the last planning commission meeting, they talked extensively about multimodal pathways, particularly for bikes throughout the city of Carlton. They were talking about it at a policy level, and they got to a consensus that they wanted to have a joint discussion with city council, again, to talk about policy related to multimodal. We did see some of that coming through with the comprehensive plan goals that we saw tonight. So they would like a joint work session. Knowing everybody's time is very valuable and thin. My suggestion is we do that joint work session at our normal February date. I think that's February 7th. I should check my list. February 7th for the work session. Then we do a joint work session with the planning commission to have that discussion. But also raise the opportunity we heard earlier today, comprehensive plan is wrapping up, moving into the development code. We talked a lot with city council goals, a number of actions that would happen concurrently with the adoption of the comprehensive plan and the revisions of the development code. And so I have put forth here an estimate, a tentative timeline that we would look at these topics that we've been waiting for the right time to address. And this seems like it's the right time to start these discussions and addressing. With some of those are vacation rental properties, historic district, housing policy approaches, promoting green space. A lot of these things coincide with what we heard. I put a tentative timeline because my idea is that I'm gonna need some professionals. Let's just say for the vacation rental process, having gone through that in another city where vacation rentals are incredibly popular. I know that there's a lot of legalities about how you handle the licensing process if you were to put in caps. Very specific nuances. So for that particular discussion, I would lean on our city attorney. And we know we're not his only client. So scheduling that would depend upon other demands on his time. So that's why I said this is tentative. That's not the only example of when I'm gonna need an expert. So it's gonna take some coordination of getting those people in place so that you can have a substantive discussion. If these work session topics are related to the development code update, then your recommendations and your input would go to the consultant, which would then go to the planning commission, work through that process and come back to you for adoption, just like the comprehensive plan is. If it's outside the development code, then we would work and take those outcomes from your discussion. We'd work with our city attorney and bring forth an ordinance that would update that section of the code concurrently with the development. So my question to you is, are you okay with this tentative work session topic of the concept that we're going to start tackling these items that we've had on our council goals and start substantively talking about them and providing some recommendations for us?
Yeah.
Is this sufficient?
I'm sorry,
Is this sufficient?
is this sufficient?
Yep.
I believe so.
Isn't it better for them to discuss, give an opinion, and then we discuss our opinion after they gave theirs?
That's twice as long as discussing it all together.
Are they not gonna have a meeting then?
Planning
meeting?
commission?
Yeah, are they not gonna have their monthly meetings about this, or we just gonna be in a council meeting with us discussing this?
They're likely to have their February planning commission meeting. I don't know that they have anything on their agenda right now. They still have to get past their January one, but they are likely to have their February planning commission meeting regardless. This is just efficient as in you already have a work session scheduled.
Yeah.
So bringing the planning commission in, and the planning commission already talked about bikeways and what their thoughts were. So this is them sharing their ideas with you, so you can have the discussion together.
There are more cooks in the kitchen. Things will take longer to
And then-
discuss.
But with the work session, remember, it's just discussion, not action.
Yeah.
So
So,
the cake doesn't need to make it into the.
like we had 5 items to discuss for the city building, and it took us forever, so.
But we only have an hour on the work session.
That's what I'm saying, but I think,
And with that being said, where would that? You're gonna bring in 6 more people in this room, or we going to the fire hall? I've thought about that, hadn't you?
I would, well, the planning commission, did you see the look of horror? The planning commission primarily attends remotely, and that seems to be how they have preferred running their meetings. So I would encourage them to attend remotely so that we can still have the space here. If I get feedback from them at their January meeting that no, they want to be in the room and we're running our room and knock down walls, then I will look for alternative space. But if at all possible, just for scheduling and looking, I would encourage.
Works for me.
Okay.
I just think, in person with them, you just get better
That's preferable.
feel.
Maybe some of them can be here in person and some not. I know Annette will be, because she's in Mexico.
You okay with this concept?
Yeah,
All right, then I will move forward with that.
yeah, these are things that we've been bouncing around for quite a while, so it'd be good to have some little more conversation about them. And with that, is there anything else from anybody? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Right.
Aye. Thank you. I'll try to pay better attention